Welcome back. My name is Lindsay and this is Knitting Video Podcast, episode 15, I believe. Today is Monday, October 29th, and I can't believe that October's almost already up. I can't believe it. This entire year has been speeding by. It's very gloomy and rainy today, which I think is pretty great. We have had such an incredibly dry, hot summer, and this autumn so far has been relatively dry here too. I live in Oregon, so we're used to a lot of rain here, and when it doesn't rain for a long time, it feels wrong. So last weekend, my husband and I were looking at the forecast and we were like, okay, the weather's about to change. Let's go ahead and put the garden away. So we mulched all of the beds, and we took down all of the sunflowers that were starting to die, and we just put everything away basically. And I was kind of shocked to find that we had a second round of artichokes that were ready to eat. I didn't expect that at all, because I do think that artichokes, if you're in the right zone and climate, they'll give you one round in spring and one round in fall for harvesting, but I just didn't think that we were in the right zone for that. So I think it's just because we've had such a hot summer. I don't know, that's my guess. Other than putting the garden to bed, I've been doing a whole lot of reading, which until knitting took over my life, I was a really big bookworm. And then I just didn't think I could read and knit at the same time. I didn't think that I had the ability to multitask like that. Though I did buy, where is it? I did buy a Kindle Paperwhite several months ago, intending to give it an honest try, and I just never got around to it. But then, I don't know, I think it was a month or two ago, I ran into a podcast episode from Ava of The Charm of It, and she talked about some of her tips for reading and knitting at the same time. And one of the things that she discussed was that you really don't need to look at your knitting at all. That you gotta just like trust your hands when you're doing a simple stitch like stockinette or ribbing. It's really quite possible to read and to not have to worry about looking at your knitting constantly. Like I thought, I mean, I've watched TV and been in conversations and things like that and found myself going for stretches of time without looking at my knitting, but I always check, every 20 seconds or so, or I don't know, I haven't really clocked it, but I always check and make sure I haven't dropped a stitch or anything like that. So that was kind of the biggest thing that I learned, was how to kind of trust my hands to do what they need to do. And I only ran into trouble with that one time when I was knitting with 2 strands of yarn, and there was a stitch where I only picked up one of the strands. So I had to drop back down several rows to go and fix that, but it was no problem. So suddenly I'm a knitter and a reader again, and it feels so good. I mean, like I said, I used to read a whole lot. I was an English literature major in college, and it felt wrong to go for so long without reading. And I did read audiobooks, but actually this is what prompted me to learn to read and knit at the same time. Sometimes the narrators don't read the book in the way that I agree with, if that makes any sense. I was reading the book series, or I was listening to the book series A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is something that was recommended through several different knitting podcasts. And the first 2 books were done really well. I liked the narrator. She did a good job, or at least I didn't have a problem with her. And then they switched narrator in the 3rd book, and it was as if I was reading listening to an entirely different story. And I almost returned the book and got my credit back because I got it from Audible because I was so upset. But I powered through and I listened to her read. It's not the 4th book, but I think it's like book 3.1. It's a novella that was published before her next publication comes out. You probably can't see, but my cat's in the window right here. What are you doing? And after I read or listen to book 3.1 from the new narrator, I just decided I am not going to be buying any more of these Audible books. I'm going to be reading the rest of the series because it ruined it for me. Yeah, it feels really good to be able to read again while knitting. It has to be, something simple like stockinette stitch in the round. For instance, if I'm knitting sleeves, it's kind of the perfect way to deal with Sleeve Island because reading a book takes me out of sort of the monotony of the knitting completely. Anyway, before I jump into finished objects, I really quickly wanted to backtrack a little bit and talk about a project that I talked about last week because, well, you'll see. Last week I talked about the Ito shawl. And I finished this project before the designer, Melody Hoffman, got the rights back from Lane magazine, which is where it was originally published, and was able to publish it on her own. She released a little vlog a week or two ago about this shawl, and she was talking about the split splicing method with Plotalopi specifically in this design, and she was kind of going over the details, and she was showing the photo shoot that they did in the vlog for the shawl. And as I'm watching it, I'm looking at the shawl and I'm thinking, wait a minute, there's something different. And then as she's going over the pattern in detail, she says at one point that there's absolutely no purling in the pattern. I'm like, wait a minute, what? Because in issue 4 of Lane, which is where the pattern is originally published, it's called Shibui in Lane, but it has since been renamed the Ito shawl. The instructions say in the lace sections that you need to purl the wrong sides. And I didn't even bother to look and see if there were any corrections made. What do you call that? Errata? I didn't even bother to look. And I probably would have, but when you go to read the instructions in the back of the book, or in the back of the issue, the only image is a little illustration. So I didn't even think to, go back and look at the photos. Which, honestly, even if I had thought to look at the photos, there's only a couple photos, and one of them is teeny tiny, and the other one, I guess you can tell that the lace is in garter, but it's kind of hard to see. And I remember thinking when I first chose to knit the shawl that one of the things that I really loved about it was the squishy garter lace. So I don't know how I missed the fact that that I was doing the lace parts wrong. I don't know how I did that. And when I found out that I had done it wrong, I was like so mad for like 2 days, because to me, garter lace is life. I just love it. And I'm not like hating on the stockinette, but it makes it so that, there's garter, and then like it drops down into the stockinette lace, and it stretches the lace section out too much, so it's not, it just changes the look. And I do love this shawl, and I wear it a ton, but I would have loved it even more if I'd done it the right way. And this is Plotalopi. There's absolutely no way I'm ripping this back because it would just tear it all to shreds. So I just wanted to put that out there in case any of you are following the instructions from Lane issue 4 for this shawl. If any of you have the intention of doing that, check the errata, because they do have the correction on the website. I've since actually looked. This is why I don't tend to knit patterns from books or magazines, because I don't go and bother and look and see what the corrections are. Whereas in Ravelry, they can, the designer can just update the pattern. So anyway, I do love my shawl. I just would have loved it even more if I had done it the right way. Last week I showed you the little swatch that I made for the teddy bear sweater by PetiteKnit, which is here. And I used this superwash merino wool dyed with avocado, and I paired it with a mohair silk blend that I dyed with birch bark. And together, I just felt like together they made this really, really pretty sort of heathered pink. And I loved the way that looked. So, but I knew from this swatch that I was going to have to drop down a needle size in order to get gauge. Interestingly enough, the pattern calls for US 4s, which is a 3.5 millimeter for like the cuff and the sleeves and anything with ribbing, and it calls for a US 6 for everything else. In order to get gauge, I had to use US 3s, and I'm talking about the body part. For some reason, my gauge was way off. So I finished my Norte cardigan, which I'll talk about in a minute. The Norte cardigan was using my US 3s, which is what I needed for the teddy bear cardigan, or for the teddy bear sweater. So I didn't want to go any smaller than a 3 for the ribbing and the cuffs and stuff, because I know with baby sweaters, babies have big old heads, and it's really important to be able to stretch the sweater over the head. So I was afraid to go any smaller. So I ended up using a US 3 for the ribbing and also for the body. And I think it turned out just fine. And the neck actually looks really tiny, but it stretches so much. I'm actually, if I want to, able to get it over my daughter's head. And her head's going to be a lot bigger than the baby's head will be. So I'm not worried about it. Yes, I'm very, very, very pleased with how this turned out. I decided to knit the 3rd size, which is the 9 to 12 month size. And because the baby is going to be born in March, and the weather in spring is always a little bit unpredictable. The spring when my daughter was born, because she was an April baby, when we got home from the hospital, it was already 70 degrees, and it never really got any cooler than that. And the summer was blazing hot. So I think it's a little bit risky to knit a pullover sweater for a newborn baby here in spring. So I will probably knit baby number 2 a cardigan for spring, something teeny tiny. But I wanted something that would fit for the following autumn and winter for this baby. And so that's why I chose this size. And I just embroidered on the little nose and mouth and eyes yesterday. So cute. For that I used, I had a little leftover Quince & Co. Finch. I didn't want to use something black. I wanted it to kind of blend in with the heatheriness of the yarn combination I chose. And this is, I can't remember exactly what the colorway is, but it's one of their natural colors, and it's just this kind of like charcoaly gray color. So I think that it makes for a good pairing with the yarn. And a lot of people have been asking me about my honest opinions regarding PetiteKnit patterns, because I think a lot of people find her patterns a little bit difficult to follow. My honest opinion regarding her patterns, and I've knit 4 so far, is that all of the information is there, and I'm just talking about her English translations. I don't know about any of the other translations, but all the information you need is there, but she doesn't hold your hand line by line like a lot of paid for patterns will do. So if you are a beginner at sweater construction, you may want to either knit a pattern of that same construction first, something that does give you the kind of line by line rundown so you can get a concept of those sweater elements like short row shaping or raglan increases, things like that. If you want to tackle it as a first time or a beginner sweater knitter, then you may want to do a little bit of research. I would probably just Google short row shaping, neck, and also raglan increases, just to see someone else kind of talk you through the construction and how it works and how it all relates to one another. I think it's definitely doable, but if I were a beginner with knitting sweaters, I would probably struggle. As it is, I actually really appreciate the way that she writes her patterns, because it kind of just, like, I just read it and I go, oh, okay. And then I just am able to kind of see it from the designer's perspective, or from like I kind of see the whole picture a little bit better that way. And I guess in a way it kind of teaches me something. So that is my honest opinion regarding PetiteKnit patterns. They are all kind of like that. I've knit the Alfred sweater, and I've knit the teddy bear sweater, and I've knit another project that I'm going to show you in just a minute. And yeah, they're all kind of like that. So that's my opinion. So the next pattern that I'm going to talk about is the one that I am wearing right now. This is the Norte Cardigan. And this is from Making Stories Breeze, which is this issue of Making Stories. And I had to put this pattern down for a little while while I was in my first trimester, because A, it was really hot outside, and B, I couldn't handle the smell of super sheepy wool. I love it. Now that I'm out of the first trimester, like, sheepy wool, I love it. But yeah, any strong smell whatsoever while I was in the first trimester was off limits for me. I only recently just kind of picked it back up again, and all I had to do was finish the sleeves, which again is great for reading and knitting at the same time. And yeah, I am really, really pleased with it. Here's the picture of the pattern in the issue. And in this issue, for the sample, she uses the gray yarn. It's a natural gray color of, I think it's called Vanna Ool. And I used the exact same yarn, but I chose the marled black and white, which I am really, really pleased with. I do not have a marled, well, before this I did not have a marled sweater in my collection, so this is going to get a lot of use. I've already worn it. So one of the things I really love about this sweater are the little eyelets, which I don't know how well you can see right now, for the raglan increases. It's just kind of a nice touch to include with rustic yarn. I also really appreciate the edges. They're all like this with the twisted ribbing, and then there's just this slight bit of stockinette. And I could have gone a little bit more dramatic with the stockinette curl, but I decided to kind of keep it tame. But the sleeves are like that as well. And I like the twisted ribbing because, again, I feel like it stands out better with the rustic yarn. And I just added buttons. The buttons are just at the very bottom. I think it's kind of meant to be more open. And I just had some old man sweater buttons that I used. I don't really have a lot of buttons in my stash right now, but I like the way these kind of work with the colors of the marled. And as far as fit goes, it's not really something that I can close with the current occupant hanging out here. but it's something that I can wear pretty easily open right now, and it keeps me nice and toasty. I tend to run pretty warm, especially when I'm pregnant, so I plan on wearing this as a coat type of thing for the days where it's not too chilly or raining, and I just love it. I think the only deviation that I made to the pattern, aside from making the stockinette curl a little shorter, was I chose a different bind off for the neckline, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's a bind off that I have been using a lot. It's become kind of my new go-to because it's just a little bit stretchy. I think that it's just about as stretchy as the cast on edge if you're using the long tail cast on method. So yeah, that's the Norte cardigan. It's done. It makes me really happy. It's very cozy, and it goes with a lot of my wardrobe. My last finished object is the little Anker bonnet by PetiteKnit. Yet another PetiteKnit pattern. This is the back, and this is the front. And these strings are made with a little bit of I-cord. The yarn that I used for this is my non-superwash base, and I dyed it with lavender, which I usually get a kind of pale yellow whenever I dye with lavender. And then I overdyed it, or not overdyed it, but I modified it with iron and got sort of a green tinged gray. And I think it's just like a really nice, soft, kind of neutral color. This bonnet is actually not for my baby, but for a little swap that I'm doing with...
Hello, Mom.
Hello. Can you say hi to the camera?
Hello.
Hello. Bunny sweater.
It's your bunny sweater.
Yeah. See you later.
See you later. Bye.
She just came home from preschool and she's watching a little TV before nap time. So anyway, yeah, I knit this for another little baby that's going to be born about our due dates are about a week apart. I was contacted by a woman on Instagram who she makes a lot of like bath and body products with really good materials, and yeah, so she offered to do a little swap with me. I knit her a few little baby items, and she sends me some of her products in return. And so I am gonna give this to her, plus probably a pair of those acorn mitts that I made in the last episode. I'm not going to give her the ones that I already made, but I'm going to make her baby a new pair. And then maybe a pair of socks or stockings, and I know that she's going to do cloth fibering, so I thought maybe I could make her a soaker, a wool soaker. One thing about dyeing with lavender is that it makes the yarn smell like lavender for a really long time. It just kind of has a fresh lavender scent. I really like it. I do plan on making one more of those Anker's bonnets with the remaining yarn, plus a few thousand other things, because there's a lot of this left. But what I think I'm going to do is pair the lavender dyed yarn with a little bit of this silk mohair that I dyed with red onion skins. It's got a bit of a green tint to it. And I think together they'll go pretty well. Either that, or I'll use the remaining yarn from my teddy bear sweater. But I don't want to go like all pink. But the reason I didn't add the mohair to the bonnet that I'm going to be gifting is because I know that there are some people who have allergies to mohair. and I just didn't want to risk that. If my baby has an allergy, I'll notice it right away. I'll know why, and it's no big deal, you know. It's not going to bother me because it's only going to take a few hours to make this bonnet. But yeah, I just didn't feel comfortable gifting something with mohair in it. I don't know. And also, I was able to knit and read while I made this bonnet. Well, when I did this section anyway, I had to put the book down for the decreases because that required a little bit too much counting. So, but yeah, knitting and reading. So I only have one work in progress on the needles right now, and it is a sock that I am knitting for a good friend of mine who had a birthday in September. And I've just decided, honestly, that when it comes to knitting gift knits, it will probably be very rare that I make something on time, and people will just get it when they get it. But yeah, this is the simple skip sock or simple Skype sock, which is a pattern that I often see that's done in variegated yarns, which I've never been drawn to it when I see it in variegated yarns, but when I see it in a solid or a semi-solid, I really like it. And my friend who I'm knitting this for, who I've known since I was in grade school, he and I are close friends, and I used to go shopping with him back when we were kids, and I am pretty versed on his personal style, though I'm sure that are certain things that have changed. He's not the kind of guy who would like something like a hiking sock or an athletic style sock. He's got kind of a classy style, and with little quirks. He likes to wear socks with like polka dots or kitty cats, for instance. But I thought he would like kind of a classic sock. But one thing that I was a little bit worried about was if I put a contrasting toe and heel, I thought that might look too, I don't know, athletic or something for him. So I decided that I was going to try, if I could, to just do one color. And so I got down to where the toe would be, and then I had to weigh both the cake and the sock to make the determination of whether or not I thought I could pull it off with making two matching solid socks. And it looks like I'm going to be good to go. So this yarn is, it's one of the bases I've been trying out. It's an American yarn, and it's an 80/20 superwash. And I don't enjoy knitting with it per se because it's quite stiff, and you know, there's a little bit more nylon content than, you know, sort of your standard 75/25. But the socks that I've made with it are good socks. Like, they fit on my feet really well, and they sort of soften up in the wash, and they seem really durable. As for the color, I dyed this with walnut and cochineal, and I honestly cannot remember if I dyed it first with walnut and then over dyed it with cochineal or vice versa, but I am pretty sure that I did not put the walnut and the cochineal in the same dye pot. I don't think I have notes for this. I've been trying to get better with taking notes about my dye methods and stuff, so I can do some recreating, because I would love to recreate this color. I dyed like 6 skeins of this and sold all but just this skein, and this is, I love this color. I am totally all about making fall colors right now, so I'm trying really hard to replicate something like this in my dye pots. as we speak. There are stripes in the sock of just the brown where the walnut sort of took over. And it adds just a really pretty complexity, I think, to the overall color. And honestly, I would love to knit like a sweater in this color. So yeah, socks for my friend. And that's the only work in progress I have going right now, though I am going to cast on for that bonnet and probably finish that tonight. Other than that, I don't really have any big projects in mind. Oh, I do actually. I'm going to be knitting the rest of the Selbu mittens from the Selbu Mitten Club from Ellie of Skein Your Knits. I have been looking forward to casting on those mittens and finishing them for quite a while, so I really want to get to that. So I don't really have any skeins of yarn to show you from my dye pots right now because most of them are drying on the drying rack or in the dye pots themselves currently. I am back to dyeing pretty much regularly right now, which is awesome. It feels pretty good to be dyeing again. But I did do a little bit of dyeing that I can show you on some little onesies for the baby. I was digging through my daughter's old clothes. I've been doing a lot of nesting, like rearranging the house and trying to get things ready for the baby because time, like I said, is flying. I'm already, like today I'm at the halfway mark. I'm at 20 weeks right now. And time's not going to slow down anytime soon because we're about to enter the holiday season and everything's hectic around that time too. So I just knew that I wanted to kind of start preparing. So I got out all of Ella's old clothes and started separating it by size, and I pulled out all these white onesies. I think I have at least 20 of them of different sizes that I purchased or that were given to me by people who were trying to find someone to give their old baby clothes away to. And the minute I saw the white onesies, I knew that they were destined for my dye pots. So the only ones I've only dyed 4 so far with Madder Root, and I thought I would show them to you and kind of talk about what I did and like some of the issues I'm having and all that. So I had a dye bath with Madder Root going, and I stuck these 2 in the bath, and then about, I don't know, a few hours later I added these 2. And you can see there's just a little bit of a shade difference. These are a little darker and these are a little lighter, but they all took the color pretty well. They've all been rinsed out, and then I threw them in the washing machine with a load of laundry. Don't do that, by the way, because you'll dye your clothes red. And then they've been through the dryer. So yeah, they've been fully washed and dried, and they're still whole nut color strong. I decided that I was going to try mordanting with soy milk for these because they're 100% cotton, and I believe I've read somewhere that soy milk is a better mordant for plant-based fibers than alum is. I could be making that up, but I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere. And I've only worked with cotton once, and I did use alum, and I didn't get the best results. So, but I don't have any direct comparisons to really make that claim, so I don't know. But yeah, I just took like a cup or maybe 2 cups of dried beans, and I soaked them in water overnight, and then I blended them up in my blender, and then I soaked all the onesies and added the soy milk to the bucket and stirred it all together, and then I let it sit for like a day, or maybe 2 days, because it was really stinky when I went to drain the soy milk. And like it was so stinky that I, instead of just throwing it in the spin cycle in my washing machine to get rid of the fluid, I let it do a rinse and spin because I was just worried that, I don't know, the smells still get to me, just not as bad as they did. So I was worried a little bit that that might have rinsed out too much of the soy milk and damaged the like mordanting properties, but Madder requires a mordant for color fastness and stuff, and I feel like these took the dye really well. So I think that it worked. I hope. I still have quite a few onesies to get through. I've decided I need to kind of dye through them quickly because I think I read somewhere that the longer you wait with fiber that has been mordanted with soy, the less effective the soy mordant becomes. Again, I could be making that up, but it's just something that I feel like I've read somewhere. So anyway, I'm going to be working on those for the next week or so. I really want some yellow ones, maybe some logwood dyed ones. Yeah, I'm just going to be trying to make them as colorful as possible. And I might even experiment with doing some like printing with iron water. I've seen Rebecca Desnos do that with some of her naturally dyed clothing items. You just take a paintbrush and some iron water and you kind of like make little prints. I think that would be really cute. So I did run into a couple little problems. I dyed these with the plant material in the dye bath. And this one was not one that I purchased. It was one that was handed down. It's a little different than the rest of them in that it has these little eyelets throughout the fabric. Don't know if you can see them very well right now, but... And like the stitching was pink before, and the madder dyed it kind of orange. But there are a couple spots on this one where the dye got really, oh, dark here, got quite concentrated, like right here, and in some areas along the neckline. And I do know that this onesie in particular had some yellow stains on it. And so I'm kind of wondering if that had anything to do, because you never know like how the dye is going to react with certain chemicals that might be on the, or certain, I don't know, things that might be on the fiber. I still really like it and I will definitely use it, but yeah, that just kind of caught me off guard. The other one took the dye a little bit more evenly. Actually, a lot more evenly. There's none of those dark splotches. And I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I mean, I guess there are kind of some darker concentrated areas, but I like that type of effect with natural dyeing. It's kind of a mottled effect. And yeah, same with the the other two that I put in the dye pots that I put in later. They sort of have that kind of mottling happening in certain places, but they did take the dye more evenly, especially considering that I really didn't stir them all that much. So yeah, I'm really happy with these, and I'm glad that I tried this out, and I cannot wait to try it out with some of the other dye materials that I have waiting, like marigolds and onion skins and avocados, of course. Yeah, anyway, I think that's just about it for today. I was going to talk about sort of wrapping my mind around goals for 2019, but I really got to get my daughter up for a nap. So I think I'll save that for the next episode. I feel like I'm missing something. Oh well. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me for a little while. I hope you all have a wonderful end of October, beginning of November. I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to be publishing this. Hopefully by the end of the night, but sometimes it takes me a couple days. So I don't know if it'll be October still or if we're going to be in the beginning of November when you see this. But in any case, I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.